Good morning. Welcome to worship with First Baptist Church of Ann Arbor. We're delighted to have you worshiping with us on this last Sunday of July. My name is Xan Morgan. I'm on staff here, and our pastors, Stacy and Paul, are wrapping up their time away, and we'll be back in the office this week. A big thank you to Reverend Ashley Mangrum, who will be preaching this morning. Ashley, we miss you, and we are glad to have you leading us in worship today. Ashley and her family have been a part of our congregation over the last few years, and this past year moved to Tennessee and have been worshiping with us virtually. Ashley, thank you for joining us this morning. I want to draw your attention to a couple of items in the description of this video. You will see a chance to tell us that you were here worshiping with us. There's a link there for a worship sign-in. Please take a moment and let us know that you were here. You'll see some information about what is happening in the life of our church, specifically for children and teens, for their families, and for any friends they'd like to bring with. We are having Church at the Pool is Cool on August 15. We'll be at the pool from 9 to noon at Georgetown. We've got the place rented. There will be lifeguards, and we'll have a big projector screen with worship being projected there on the pool deck. We hope that you are able to join us. Please let us know, RSVP, using the link provided there. And I look forward to seeing the littlest among us at a play date right after worship today at the playground at church.
Going on a mission trip can change your life, shift your priorities, and deepen your faith in God and in a better world. Today, I want to invite you to Passport to Nica. A free virtual mission trip experience with AMOS Health and Hope, a Christian nonprofit focused on improving health alongside vulnerable communities in Nicaragua. My name is Gilmer Sanchez, and I will be your guide throughout this journey. Over the course of 5 videos, we'll travel to La Danta, a rural community in the southern Caribbean coast region of Nicaragua. We'll hear stories and testimony from Juan Pablo, the community health promoter, the patient he served, and the community leader who make this powerful ministry possible. And all the while, we will experience life in Nicaragua firsthand. Plus, you receive our printable Passport to Nica guide with Bible passages, reflection questions, and activities you can complete to collect visas along the way. Many of us can take time away or physically participate in an international mission trip. Or maybe we're interested in serving in a country like Nicaragua, but first want to get a taste of what it may be like before diving right in. Join us to get your Passport to Nica, experience life in Nicaragua, and deepen your calling to serve and care for vulnerable people in our world, all from right where you are at home.
I'd like to invite all youth and adults to join me across all 5 Sundays in August during second hour as we navigate this virtual mission trip experience together. Please join us for as many or as few Sundays as you are able. Can't wait to see you then.
Now, let us enter into a time of worship as we say this call to worship responsively together. We see light, hope, and joy.
We bring heart, soul, mind, and body.
We share blessings and fears.
We bring faith and doubt.
With all that we are and all that we have, let us worship God.
A reading from Ephesians. For this reason I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth takes its name. I pray that, according to the riches of his glory, he may grant that you may be strengthened in your inner being with power through his Spirit, and that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith as you are being rooted and grounded in love. I pray that you may have the power to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, so that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. Now to him who by the power at work within us is able to accomplish abundantly, far more than all we can ask or imagine, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus to all generations, forever and ever. Amen. The word of the Lord.
I want to walk as a child of the light. I want to follow Jesus. God sent the stars to give light to the world. The star of my life is Jesus. In him there is no darkness at all. The night and the day are both alike. The Lamb is the light of the city of God. Shine in my heart, Lord Jesus. I want to see the brightness of God. I want to look at Jesus. Clear Sun of righteousness, shine on my path and show me the way to the Father. In him there is no darkness at all. The night and the day are both alike. The Lamb is the light of the city of God. Shine in my heart, Lord Jesus. I'm looking for the coming of Christ. I want to be with Jesus. When we have run with patience the race, we shall know the joy of Jesus. In him there is no darkness at all. The night and the day are both alike. The Lamb is the light of the city of God. Shine in my heart, Lord Jesus.
A reading from the Gospel of John. After this, Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also known as the Sea of Tiberias. A large crowd kept following him because they saw the signs that he was doing for the sick. Jesus went up the mountain and sat down with his disciples. Now, the Passover, the festival of Jews, was near. When he looked up and saw a large crowd coming towards him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of these to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a boy who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many people?" Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in the place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were satisfied, he told his disciples, "Gather up all the fragments left over, so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up, and from the fragments of the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they had 12 baskets. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they began to say, "This is indeed the prophet who has come into the world." When Jesus realized that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountains by himself. The word of the Lord.
Good morning, kiddos. Sometimes I hear people say, kids, they are the leaders of tomorrow, or the leaders of the future. Just like some people say that kids are the future of the church. It's a way of trying to celebrate kids by talking about how they someday will be leaders, or someday they will be the church. I'd like to complicate that a little bit. I'd like to push back on that some. Because you know what? You kiddos are leaders now. You are the church now. We believe that at First Baptist Church here in Ann Arbor. We hear a story today about a kid who brings some bread and some fish. And he brings that bread and fish to Jesus when there are a whole bunch of people who are hungry. We hear in the Bible 5,000 people, but probably that was only counting the men. Now we would count the women and the children too, so there are a lot of people there, at least 10,000. So there's a big need. And in the story we hear the kid comes up and says, "Here's what I have, and I'm ready to share it." That child was a leader that day. So he shares what he has, and Jesus blesses it, says thank you to God, and God does big things with that gift that the child gives. I wonder what gifts you have to give. What gifts you are already giving. Are you good at making people laugh? I wonder if maybe your gift is that you're really good at listening to people when they're talking about their hard feelings or their sad feelings, their big feelings. I wonder if you're really good at playing and including others. I wonder if you're really good at teamwork and you take on the leadership role and help all those who are part of your team get a task done. I wonder what your gift is. Do you know what it is? Sometimes it helps if people say to us, "I see this gift in you. I see this gift in you." So maybe you need to ask. Maybe a grown-up at your house can help you know what your gift is. Or maybe a friend might help you know. Often teachers help you know what your gift is. And when you know what your gift is, then you can share it. You can share it with your family. You can share it with your classmates. You can share it at church and with the world. you have a gift. I sometimes go to certain friends because I know what their gifts are. If I'm feeling stuck in my brain and I need somebody to help me be creative, I have a certain friend I go to. If I have, big questions about life and I just need to go on a walk and talk through things, I have a certain friend I go to. If I need a friend who's not going to help me solve the problem but will just cry with me, I have a friend for that too. My friend who cries with me. And I have friends I go to who, always help me laugh. How good it is to have gifts and to share them with one another. And we know, as we heard in the story today, when the child brings forth the gift of food, God does awesome things with it. God uses that gift to bless, to feed, to meet the needs of others, individually and as a big community. So let's think about what our gifts are. And then let's share them with the world. Because kiddos, you are leaders. You have gifts and you are making a difference in the world today. You did yesterday too, and you will tomorrow as well. Amen. Will you pray with me? O God of gratitude, who delights in the goodness of the world, we give thanks today for the lives in this circle, for the home that holds us, for the work that challenges us, for the history that calls to us, and for the gift of this life. May your love deepen between us and your Spirit dwell among us. O God of communion, who counts the hairs on our heads, help us to have the strength to honestly name what we need, the humility to listen when we are wrong, the courage to face conflict, the trust to share vulnerably, and the ability to laugh with abundance. May your love deepen between us and your Spirit dwell among us. O God of gentleness, who catches the snowflakes as they fall, remind us to be gentle with ourselves, when the dishes pile, when we make mistakes, when the work is slow, or when what we hope for does not come to be. May your love deepen between us and your Spirit dwell among us. O God of justice, who hears the cries of your people, we pray for those who are in pain this day. We pray for Nancy Rushton, for Joe and Kathy Mortensen, Ron Tipton, Mary Margaret Hatt, Astrid Beck, Esther Floyd, Maria Piriantozzi, Marilyn Marsh, Betty Gersler, Iris Martin, for the family and friends of John Rapson, for Na Iamona, for Tom and Terry Rubenstein, Barry Smith, John Rowe, Joyce Lindenan, Cindy Kincaid, and Ken Riggs. For those suffering under systems of oppression, for those sick, dying, or mourning, for our neighbors, and for one another. May your love deepen between us and your Spirit dwell among us. O God of silence, who speaks into the stillness of our hearts, we pause to listen, to rest in your arms. Walk among us today as your love deepens between us and your Spirit dwells among us. And now together we pray using the words Jesus taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Good morning. The ability to remain present and active in the First Baptist Church community is one of the things I'm most thankful for from the past 15 months. My family and I moved from Ann Arbor to Suwanee, Tennessee a year ago, and I'm joining you today from St. Augustine's Chapel on the campus of the University of the South, where I serve as a chaplain. I'm honored to be with you today, and I hope that my words and the intention behind my words would be pleasing to God and an encouragement to you. Typically, on Sunday mornings, First Baptist, we follow what's called the Revised Common Lectionary. This is a system of sorts that organizes the Bible into weekly readings so that if you follow the lectionary over the course of a 3-year time, you would have read through the whole Bible. The lectionary texts for today, 2 of which were read earlier in the service, are beautifully reassuring. They're words of hope and of abundance. They're words of fullness. There's 2 accounts in this week's readings, one in the Old Testament and one in the New, of God miraculously feeding people who are empty, God fills. And in the reading from Ephesians, we're reminded of how vast God's love is for us, so that we might comprehend and be filled with the fullness of God, who's able to do abundantly more than we could even ask or imagine. And the words from the Psalms are equally reassuring. God satisfies the desires of every living thing, the words from Psalms tell us today. These are words of abundance, of when there's enough, always enough, more than enough even, more than we even know to ask for. enough to meet our deepest and our truest needs, enough to fill the hollow places in our hearts and lives. These words tell us that God knows our hunger pains, the physical, but also the emotional, mental, and the spiritual ones, and responds with abundance, bringing us to a place of fullness. That's what the lectionary texts for today tell us. And these are words that we need to hear and know and live, especially after so many months of just scraping by. But there's another story that's wedged right in between all of that abundance. And it's not the story of fullness. It stands in stark contrast to the other texts. It's one of the most harrowing stories of the Bible, and it's a difficult text that deals with a difficult subject, that of sexual assault. And it's important for us to hear this text alongside the stories of abundance and fullness. Because to invite only the heartwarming parts of our Bible into worship and to make space for only the easy parts of our faith, well, that's a cheap faith, I'm sorry to say. And on top of that, to leave this story out would be to silence, yet again, the voice of someone who is notoriously silent, even in her own story. And I just couldn't do that. Skipping this difficult text, and believe me, I really was tempted to do just that, would reinforce the unfortunate inclination of the American church toward our own comfort and convenience. But we here are choosing to be different. We as a community committed to following Jesus, committed to justice and God's reconciling work in the world, we choose not to look away. 2 Samuel chapter 11 begins like this. In the spring of the year, the time when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab with his officers and all Israel with him. They ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained at Jerusalem. It happened late one afternoon, when David rose from his couch and was walking about on the roof of the king's house, that he saw from the roof a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful. And David sent someone to inquire about the woman, and it was reported, "This is Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam, wife of Uriah the Hittite." So David sent messengers to get her, and she came to him, and he lay with her. Then she returned to her house. The woman conceived, and she sent and told David, "I am pregnant." The story goes on. Next, David sends for Bathsheba's husband, Uriah, who is one of his soldiers and out fighting his battles. David tells him to come back and then go home and spend some time with his wife. Uriah says, "How can I go home and eat and drink and be warm when my fellow soldiers are out camping on the battlefield?" David schemes a bit more to try to get Uriah to go home in order to cover up what he had done. And when that doesn't work, David sends Uriah back to battle with instructions for Uriah's own death. He tells his commander to send Uriah to the front lines and then pull back, leaving him alone and vulnerable so that he would be killed. And that's what happens. Bathsheba learns that her husband has been killed, and she laments, she grieves. And when the official time of mourning is over, David sends for her again and brings her to his house. She becomes one of David's many wives, part of his harem. She gives birth to a son. And this part of the story ends with, "But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord." This, too, is the word of the Lord for God's people. I've heard this story many times. You may have as well. You may have heard many preacher types talk about it, and it's always about David. The text itself facilitates that for us. The text is situated in the larger story of King David that ultimately tells us about the mess that his family and his throne would become. Now, I've heard this story many times from the perspective of a man. There's often some justification given for David's actions because Bathsheba, from this perspective, shouldn't have been up on the roof bathing in the first place. And then Bathsheba shouldn't have gone with the royal guard that came to get her. And then perhaps Bathsheba was scheming to gain a position of power for herself, and she wanted this all along, because what woman wouldn't want to be part of David's harem? Bathsheba is an adulteress, the one who tempts David into making a mistake. From this perspective, there's always ultimately a concession that David should not have done what he did. But David is sorry. He acknowledges his sin and he repents. We even get one of the very most famous psalms from this whole mess, a prayer that David writes saying, "Against you and you alone have I sinned. Create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me." Words he wrote and prayed after meeting Bathsheba. But I can't help but hear the undertones. She shouldn't have been wearing that. She shouldn't have had too much to drink. She shouldn't have gone with him if she didn't want to find herself in that situation. She had the power to prevent this. He was powerless in the face of her temptation. Still, maybe he got carried away. He is sorry. He prays and asks God to help him not do it again. Now, time to move on. Nothing to see here. And from that vantage point, we certainly don't see Bathsheba. We don't see because we have been conditioned to look away. We have advanced beyond some of the archaic notions of patriarchal society, but we still bear the scars and still do not hold women, our voices, our experiences, even our expertise on the same level as that of men. We don't see because it's hard to believe the truth sometimes about people we know and love. And we in the church know and love King David. We don't see because we don't want to see. We don't see because when we see, we have to make a choice about what to do next. And maybe we don't know what to do next. And so we close our eyes to the whole ghastly thing. We look away from the suffering, and therefore we look away from the one who suffers. But I believe that it's crucial that we see Bathsheba this morning. I read a fabulous bit of writing about this text. The scholars David and Diana Garland discussed the role the movie, entitled David and Bathsheba, played in shaping our collective perception. The movie was made in 1951, and in it, Bathsheba is played as mysterious and alluring. She orchestrates the whole thing, and David, while admitting his desire for the woman, simply goes along with her plan. Bathsheba is likened to Satan. She says, "Let's break the law of Moses and do it with gusto." David is bewitched by a cunning seductress. And I wonder how many millions of people have seen this film, many of whom know nothing about the actual biblical text. Many who did. But I imagine all of the viewers their view as Bathsheba is colored by this big screen, horribly inaccurate portrayal, even without realizing it. I mean, goodness, how many of us still see Charlton Heston's face when we picture Moses? And then that little bit about Bathsheba as a seductress creeps into the mind and the heart. And then it comes out in the way we talk about her, in the way we remember her. And there she goes, lost underneath the thick layers of our twisted victim blaming and shaming. And we close our eyes to her suffering. Nothing to see here. But if we look away from the ugly truths in our own sacred text, in our own Bible, how can we ever hope to see the ugly truths in the world around us? If we choose not to see and name abuse and injustice here, how can we ever hope to see abuse and injustice there? Don't look away. When we look beyond the space that power takes up in this story, what will we see? We see a daughter. We see a wife of a foreigner, an immigrant, in fact. We see a woman doing what all Jewish women did at that time, which was ritual cleansing after menstruation. We see a woman without the presence and therefore immediate protection of her husband. We see a group of royal guards show up at her house with no explanation, but with a summons from the king. We see a woman going with the guards. We see King David, God's chosen ruler, and not just a symbol of power, but of power itself. And we see a woman powerless over what happens to her. We see a tiny baby bump beginning to swell. We see a woman who laments the death of her husband. This is actually the only direct action ascribed to Bathsheba in this text, that of lament. And after the allotted time for mourning, we see the royal guards arrive again on her doorstep with another summons. We see her now forced to marry her abuser. We see her belly growing. If we kept watching, we would see the death of her baby too. We see a woman of deep sorrow and loss. We see suffering. We see trauma. I once sat with an elderly woman who was ill, and instead of talking about her current illness, she told me the story of a sexual assault that had happened to her more than 40 years ago. She spent a few minutes telling me what had happened, and she spent the next 2 hours telling me about the ensuing feelings of isolation and disconnection, the loss of her relationship with family and friends, the loss of her relationship with God, the overwhelming shame. She told me the ways she had moved forward, or tried to at least, by orienting her life around protecting herself. She existed for more than 40 years in an emotional cage, an emotional cell of sorts that kept threats out, but a cell that also kept her locked inside. It was as if the trauma, unchanged and immutable, was still happening to her as she viewed every new encounter, new event, new opportunity through the lens of her assault. This, what she did, this is a very common human response to trauma. Neuroscientists study trauma, and they study what happens to our brains during trauma. And the traumatic event or events cause a physiological change in the makeup of our brain. Our brains are changed, and so then are our bodies and our emotions. One thing that trauma survivors say is how alone and unseen they felt, how alone and unseen they continue to feel as they relive their trauma again and again. But what changed for this dear woman was a new neighbor who was relentless in the hopes of becoming a friend, who invited her to church time after time until the woman simply went with her to church to stop her from asking again. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of the slow process of this woman feeling safe enough to move closer and closer toward the door of her cell and to eventually step out of it. Healing from this kind of trauma is a long journey, and it may feel impossible or scary to you. And if you find yourself feeling tossed around as if in a whirlpool or caught within the loop of a traumatic event, you need a therapist trained in trauma-informed care. And there are people at First Baptist who can help connect you with that kind of support. Human beings respond differently to trauma. We've just heard the story of how one woman responded, but we don't know how Bathsheba responded. We don't know if she closed herself up in a protective cell and shut everything else out. We don't know if she tried to fight or to flee or if she froze in the face of fear. We don't know if she had horrible flashbacks. We don't know her feelings, her thoughts, or her prayers. But we know David's. Even his admission of sin is a nod to his power. He gets to write his feelings and prayers, and they are beautiful words that will be read and prayed for generations and generations, while his victim remains silent and unseen again and again and again. I wonder why this harrowing story made it into Scripture. It certainly doesn't look good for David. And surely there are a lot of things that happened to him and many others that were significant that didn't make it into Scripture. And if we view this story as that of Bathsheba's trauma rather than that of David's mistake, and I certainly hope that we all do by this point, why is it here? Rarely are the stories of victims included. I think it's here. I think it's one way that God says to victims of sexual assault and those who have suffered trauma at the hands of power, I see you, dear one. I have not looked away. You are not alone. Here is one who suffered. See Bathsheba, a survivor. I think it's here to tell us not to look away. I think it is to teach us to read the Bible and to read the world around us with the Bathshebas in mind. Bathsheba went on to have more children. She had a son named Solomon who would succeed his father on the throne, even though Solomon was the 10th of David's 19 sons. Bathsheba was instrumental in seeing Solomon rise to the throne. And Bathsheba becomes her son, the king's right-hand woman, literally. He seats her on a throne on his right hand. The gospel writer Matthew remembers her too as one of 5 women named in the lineage of Jesus. Her name Bathsheba has a number of meanings, one of which is daughter of abundance. Now, against the backdrop of her trauma, it might be easy to read irony into the meaning of her name. But I invite you to hear her name as a continuation of the abundance present in the other texts read in the service, of God miraculously feeding the hungry, of filling the empty with the fullness of God, with the buckets to share left over. See Bathsheba, don't look away. See the daughter of abundance, sitting on the edge of a little pool in the courtyard, watching her son, the king, rule, and remembering the feeling of his squishy little hand in her own. She's humming a song that her mother sang to her, a song of liberation, perhaps Miriam's song. See Bathsheba, a woman who has endured much at the hands of power, a woman who has lived in shame and deep sorrow, who knows well the emotional, spiritual, and physical pains of emptiness that came as a result of the trauma she suffered, pains that she still feels from time to time. But also, a woman generously and miraculously filled, a woman overflowing with the fullness of God, a survivor, a daughter not defined by her trauma, but by God's provision to her in the midst of it all. A daughter not of pain, but of abundance. We can't look away.
May the peace of Christ be with you.
May the peace of Christ be with you.
May the peace of Christ be with you.
May the peace of the Lord be with you.
May God, the restorer of broken hearts, minds, and bodies, accompany you through the brokenness in your own life. Fill the empty places in your spirit with overflowing abundance. Nurture, sustain, and transform you to change the world around you. Amen.